Dr. Adam Dorsay, one of my favorite people in the world. Welcome back to the Empathy Edge podcast to talk about connection and our need for it and how to get it and why we need it and all the things. So, welcome to the show.
Maria, I'm so happy to be back with you. I'm just remembering and smiling because when I first read your book, I did something I do rarely, which was it was actually a listen, but I immediately listened to it again. And that's how much I loved your very first book, The Empathy Edge. I can't wait to listen to The Empathy Dilemma as well, but just fan of you professionally and personally.
Same. I love it. And we have met in person and we've been basically a group of whirling dervishes sitting at a table bothering people in a restaurant. So yeah, our energy levels are pretty damn close. So I love it. So we are here to talk about your new book, Super Psyched: Unleash the Power of the Four Types of Connection and Live the Life You Love. That's a lot. So we know a little bit about your story, being a former corporate guy turned psychologist, going to the love of really figuring out what makes people tick. So for those of the listeners that didn't get to enjoy your first interview, I will put a link in the show notes, but just tell us briefly how you got from being a corporate guy to now being a psychologist to now being an author.
I love that question. Well, here's how it happened. I had undiagnosed ADHD, and I didn't know why it was that I couldn't really stay on a task for very long. And I'd always wanted to become a psychologist, but if you know anything about becoming a psychologist, it means staying on a task for a very long time, including being a hermit for a long time, doing this thing called the dissertation, and lots of loneliness, and lots of just tenacity that I lacked at the time and thought I would never get. So I was also dyslexic, which added just a lot of fun to the mix. And I thought I was going to become a psychologist, but I dropped out of graduate school. And I found that working in the corporate world was relatively easier than slogging it out to become a psychologist. Well, as luck would have it, I ended up marrying a psychologist. And every day during dinner, she'd describe her day, and I'd hear about her day, and I'd say, that was supposed to be my day. And by this time, I'd pretty much gotten a handle, more than pretty much, I'd gotten a handle on my ADHD. I'd found other ways around reading, listening, but I could read for a sustained period of time. I'd trained myself. Anyhow, at the most inopportune moment, I already owned a house, had a child, and I decided to go back to graduate school. And this was at the behest of my wife and my buddy Aaron, who basically sold me on the idea that there was still time.
Yeah.
And that I should go for it, that life was too precious. I talk about it quite a bit in the book, but I decided to go to night school, and during my nights and weekends, after work, I would find a way to eke out a doctorate. And when I finally did that, I took out a home equity line of credit on our home and earned $10 an hour with no benefits for a couple of years to earn my license. And that's how it worked. I have had a very supportive wife, always went at my back. Not once did she even complain about the sacrifice she needed to endure to get me where I wanted to go. So none of us does this alone. If it weren't for my friends encouraging me, I just recently heard John Piero Pettilieri out of actually where your roots come from Sicily. He said, our friends help
I'm not
us
Sicilian.
You're not.
I'm Italian. I'm not Sicilian.
Oh, my apologies. I take it back. Somehow, well,
it's all good.
Regardless, I am a huge fan of Italy.
Exactly.
He says to me, a good friend is one who is able to imagine who you could become. They help us imagine who we could become. And that is what my wife did. That's what my buddy Aaron did. This has been a dream for me to actually do this every day. I'm actually super psyched. My nickname in high school was Enthusiasm, so it kind of lent itself to super psyched to become a podcast. One thing I want to make abundantly clear, though, is that I'm not peddling toxic positivity. I'm not saying that we should be super psyched all the time. We should feel all the feels. I'm actually suggesting we should be super connected to our psyches. So really connected to whatever it is that we're feeling. If it's grief, if it's joy, really being there and really being attentive to those feelings and what they're asking of us.
I love that. And I'm so glad you you mention that, because we do have a problem with toxic positivity in our culture
Mm.
right now. And when folks like you, folks like me are out talking to leaders about how to connect and how to build better relationships, we're not saying it's all sunshine and roses all the
Good
time,
Lord,
nor
no.
do we need to pretend that that's what we're bringing to the table at whatever point of capacity we're at on that day. So thank you for saying that. I think you may have answered my next question, because obviously relationships and connection have been such an important part of your life. But I'm wondering, in your professional work, why this book? Why connection? Why is it so important in our lives?
I'm stoked that you asked that question as well, because
Are
after
you super
sitting,
psyched?
I'm literally super psyched that you asked that question, and not, yes, 100% authentically so,
Mm-hmm.
because I trusted that when the right book would take hold of me, that would be the book I would invest my heartbeats in.
Mm-hmm.
After sitting in this chair for nearly 20,000 hours, I'd heard the term connection. I want more connection in my life. Themes and variations on this idea, this nebulous term. And I realized, oh my gosh, I need to talk about connection, because it's not something that's well defined. What do
Mm-hmm.
people mean when they say they want more connection?
Mm-hmm.
And what could it look like if we had more connected lives? And I came to realize is a way to define that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 4 places connection can exist that I've heard nobody come up with a 5th.
Right,
So it's
right,
almost like, and that it's almost like an archery target that's got a
right.
nucleus. We first connect to ourselves. Most of us think connection is connection between 2 people, but that's actually the second level, connection to others. The
Mm-hmm.
third is connection to the world. The world includes our work. It includes our history, such as our ancestry. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned you are Italian. And as Maya Angelou once said, we can't know where we're going unless we know where we're from. I
Mm-hmm.
think that we really do need to be rooted in our history and finding ways to embody some of those traditions,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's, around Christmas and having, Italian dishes around
Mm-hmm.
that time, or whatever it might be. I've got
Mm-hmm.
mine. Connection to the 4th level is connection to something greater. Greater, for some of us, means traditionally going to church, but for the most hardcore atheist,
Mm-hmm.
going to stargaze at night and
Mm-hmm.
feeling the
Being in nature.
cosmos, being
Yeah.
in nature, feeling awe. And
Mm.
one of the things that I'm so grateful to the field of psychology for really studying and putting under the microscope is awe itself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when we experience awe, we are less self-absorbed. We're more socially focused.
Mm-hmm.
Strangers at the solar eclipse that happened in 2017, and particularly in Oregon, where that was most easily seen, strangers were hugging strangers.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see that when we're in a state of awe is something very similar in brain imaging when we take psilocybin,
Mm-hmm.
the psychoactive chemical in magic mushrooms. And you don't need to take any form of any substance in order to feel awe.
Mm-hmm.
It's available to all of us. And yet it takes a little courage, because somebody might clown on you for being in a state of awe because you're so not self-absorbed. Back in the day, I don't know if you remember in YouTube, the guy who was seeing the double rainbow, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's a
Oh,
double
totally remember that. No.
rainbow.
And I'm laughing because my husband always loves to tell the story of, we had only been dating 8 months when we got engaged, but we were in our early 30s when he was almost 30. And he told me about a mountain biking trip he took in the Marin Headlands when I was away,
Mm,
and the high he got.
mm.
And that was actually the day he decided he was going to ask me to marry him, was when he got to the top, and he had this just feeling of awe and this feeling of euphoria. And he was like, yes, I'm going to do this. Like,
Okay,
so yeah.
Maria, I've got to share something with you.
Yes.
The day I got clear that I was going to marry my wife,
Yeah.
I was on a bicycle going down Haleakala in Maui, and we were riding together. She was like rider number 3, and I was rider number 9. I was looking at rider number 3, and I was like, dude, if you do not marry this woman, you are the biggest idiot who ever lived. You absolutely positively
Wait, did
must.
you know her?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I was going to, the way
she
you
was
made
on-
it
she was on
sound
the
was like
trip.
she was some stranger
She
you
was on the
saw.
trip with me. No, she and
Okay.
I had been dating, but
Uh-huh.
I received more than critical mass, enough information about her to realize that
Yeah.
I needed
I'm
to
done.
be with her in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Because and if I didn't get on a knee, I would be the world's biggest jackass. And there
Uh-huh.
was no question in my mind that this was
Uh-huh.
the least courageous thing I'd ever done, because it was so ridiculously obvious.
So funny. But that's what awe does, is it actually creates clarity for us. I want to ask a question though around this, because, and it might seem pedantic or silly, but why do we need connection?
Mm,
What is it about the way humans are wired and ourselves as a species and the way our brains work that it's actually in our not best interest to be a misanthrope and to be a hermit, right?
that's right.
What is it about connection? Why do we need it?
So what's so interesting is our brains, the things that exist between our ears at this time, are the same ones that have existed between our ears for 35 to 70,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And yet in spite of the fact that even though you might have an iPhone 17 and have upgraded multiple times, our brain has not upgraded at all. Our brains are the same as the brains of our ancestors from 35,000 to 70,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we have become a successful species partially because we are social.
Mm-hmm.
We require others. No one does this alone. As I said earlier, Barbara Streisand kind of got it wrong. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world. No, it's actually people who know they need people are the lucky and act on it are the luckiest people in the world.
Right.
We
right.
need to act on our need for other people. We have social brains. We do better together exponentially.
What happens if we don't? What happens to us? What are the downsides of not connecting?
Wired deep within our nervous systems is loneliness. And loneliness is a signal that we could be evicted from the tribe. Back in the old days, that meant our certain death.
Mm-hmm.
Our survival is really dependent on the kindness and the connection with others. Mm-hmm. We have different needs for connection. Some of us need more connection than others, but we all need some connection. Mm-hmm. My friend Britt Frank describes us as having different feeding schedules. Some of us are more like hummingbirds, need to feed all the time. And I don't know if you remember in the TV show Friends, but like Joey was in every scene. He was a hummingbird. He needed to always be there. Ross, he did, he was sometimes in there. Did you look at your last name? Ross would show up periodically. He needed friends too, but he was more of an introvert. Mm-hmm. And he had the feeding schedule more like perhaps, let's say, according to her, a scorpion. Scorpions don't need to eat all that regularly. Mm-hmm. And apparently GLP-1s are based on Gila monsters that eat like once a year. So which is really interesting to me. But regardless, we all have different feeding schedules, but we all have feeding schedules. We all need to hang out with friends or loved ones from time to time. We all need other people in our lives. And yet, one of the things that we now know, former Surgeon General made a huge warning. Dr. Vivek Murthy noticed that and he picked up on the research out of the University of Utah that if we are lonely, it can be as disastrous to our health as smoking. It can be more predictive of our mortality than other measures than like our blood sugar and our cholesterol. So it really, we have a biological incentive for connection.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get to the book, because I'm gonna for our YouTube audience, I want to put this up here. It's so pretty.
Oh, right on.
But I want to talk a little bit about, you already took us through the 4 ways we connect, right? And let's just review those quickly. Connection to self, connection to others, connection to the world, and connection to something greater. Did I get that right?
You got
okay,
it.
good.
And
I pass. I get an A. I get a gold star.
You more than get an A. And by the way, I just wanted to highlight connection to self, because it's not a narcissistic thing to get to know who you are. If we don't know who we are, and if we aren't behaving in a way that is somehow authentic, it's like walking through life with a rock in our shoe. It will inform all of the other connections that we have.
Yeah.
So
well, and from my work with the empathy dilemma, the 5-pillar framework, the first 2 are self-awareness and self-care. Because if you don't have your own house in order, I like to say, there's no space in your brain and in your heart to make connections with other people.
The Venn diagram of our work. There's so much overlap.
Yes, I know. Totally. All right. I want to talk really quickly about why we're so disconnected. You mentioned the loneliness epidemic, and we know, and I've spoken to other guests about this, like we're living in a world that's more connected than ever, yet we're so lonely, right? And it's not about how many Facebook friends we have or Instagram friends. My Gen X is showing, right? Facebook, Instagram. But it's also just, it's amazing how much we should be more connected, and yet we're not. And there's a few reasons you outline in the book for this. And I just wanted to highlight one of them specifically was this idea of the biases that mislead us. And you had this great passage in here where you talk about the brains again evolving. And here it goes. Our brains have evolved to keep us alive and make sure that we keep breathing, eating, and knowing what to do when we feel threatened. They act as prediction machines, doing everything they can to help us avoid that thing called death. Keeping us alive is a lot of work. So the brain has also worked to become as energy conserving as possible. As it evolved, it developed a series of cognitive shortcuts that help us to reach fast and usually accurate enough conclusions about problems that have allowed us to survive and to procreate. But these shortcuts have the unfortunate side effect of causing mistakes when we are dealing with harder questions and problems of modern day thinking. So you're talking here about our brain's ability. How I perceive this is the ability to make snap judgments about people that we just meet, about our ability to think, oh, this person and I will never connect, about our ability to even think I don't belong in this room, when maybe that's just our brains telling us that, right? So can you talk a little bit about biases getting in the way of connection, but also some of the other reasons that we fail to connect?
I am so glad you read that passage because it's such a central theme to the book. Mm-hmm. What caused us to become a successful species was our ability to eat. Is the same reason that we were attracted to sugar and empty calories. We go for what's easy. Mm-hmm. We go for what is efficient. We go for what's fast. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes other things get in the way, like fear, the negativity bias. We hear a rustling in the leaves, mm-hmm. and we determine it must be a tiger even though it's just a squirrel. Because if we're wrong and it is a tiger, our bloodline dies. Mm-hmm. And if we're wrong and it turns out to be a squirrel, okay, so we've experienced some fear.
Right.
Big deal.
Right.
But it is a big deal because we now experience fear in all of the other ways. Just as you described, one of the things that prohibited me from becoming a psychologist was I was scared. Rightfully mm-hmm. so. I mean, right. This is like...
And yet your life wasn't in danger, but your body felt it the same way.
It felt like I could die.
Right.
And
right.
I don't know about you, but there are many times that I'm scared about things that aren't going to kill me.
Right.
And I am not scared about things that are actually like driving from here to there. We know statistically is far more dangerous than getting on an airplane, but no one has ever clapped when a taxi arrived at its destination, and people
right.
clap all the time when the plane lands.
Right, exactly.
And there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. But when that applies to our lives, we live half-baked lives. I know mm-hmm. so many people who are rife with regret. They're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and say, I have not done half the things mm-hmm. I've wanted to do because I've been scared. Or I got married to the wrong person because I was scared that there'd be no one else. Or I got married to the wrong person because I felt pressured and they were available and mm-hmm. they wanted to. And so I said yes. And now we're in a custody evaluation. You mm-hmm. know, I see that all the time in my office, like this not listening to the knowing because it was inconvenient to say no at the time. Mm-hmm. We have yes brains. We're much more likely to say yes than no to lots of things because no is hard because we have to deal with the fact that we've rejected someone. And we know that rejection hits the same pain centers as physical pain. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to inflict that pain on another person unless we are somehow, really right. misanthropic, as you were saying right. earlier, which is, for a very select right. group of people.
Right.
So the no brain is harder. And for us to actually double down on mm-hmm. our lives requires massive activation energy, mm-hmm. which is not really easy. So many of us don't do the inconvenient thing. Mm-hmm. Last but not least, we apply this technology of going for what's easy, and we get these empty calories in social media thinking that we're connected. We're more connected now technologically than we've ever been before, and yet we're less connected interpersonally.
Right. They're shallow. They're not deep. It's like skipping a stone, right?
You nailed it.
Exactly. Well, and I think, and we're going to get into this because again, like you said, this is where our work overlaps. The role of empathy in being able to create connections and override those automatic systems in our brains and embrace people who are different from us, who we can have a connection with if we can look past the fears and past the biases and past the comparisons and all of that. So kind of to segue into that, when you think about connection in the workplace, so I know you talk in the book about lots of different types of connection, right? Spousal connection, romantic connection, connection with faith-based groups, like all different kinds of connection. But when we're talking about professional connection, um, what does that mean in the workplace? And why? I mean, I could probably answer this, but I'd love to hear this from your psychological point of view. Why is that important to create a thriving and productive workplace? And then I'll have a follow-up question once you share that with us.
I remember early in my career where my boss, Martin Darner, who's sadly no longer with us, actually lived in Pacifica for a number of years, Martin, and he said to me, you need to show your colleagues at work, this is in the corporate place, that they matter more to you even than the customer, because they are your brothers in arms, and that you will go to bat for them and you will help them out when they are struggling. Make them your number one priority. Because if we don't band together, to borrow from Benjamin Franklin, we will certainly, die apart. So that was part of the founding of our country that is applicable to being in the workplace. We need to override our narcissistic tendencies and get to know our colleagues and go to bat for them, and they will go to bat for us.
Exactly.
And through this type of cooperation, we have a corporation.
Oh, that was gold. I love that. Well, and in the work that I do around empathy, it's about creating that workplace where people feel seen, heard, and valued. And by virtue, to me, that implies connection. And when you do that, you create a group of people, to your point, where they want to have each other's backs. And that fosters engagement, that fosters innovation, that fosters creativity. And it all translates to customer experience as well, right? You can't have a great customer service experience if everyone within a company is competitive, stabbing each other in the back, constantly looking over their shoulder. Whatever they're experiencing is going to translate to what you show outwardly in the marketplace. And so that's, this is kind of how I got on the empathy train, was through my brand and marketing work of, you've got to see your customers as people. But in order to see your customers as people, internally, you've got to walk that talk, and you have to see each other as a team and as people, and you have to have those connections. You don't have to be best friends with everybody, but are there moments of levity you can share? Is there that joy pillar present? Do you feel like, yeah, this is somewhere I want to go and spend 8, 10, 12 hours engaged with these people? Hopefully the answer is yes.
1,000,000%. And why did the miracle on ice happen in 1980 when the U.S. beat the Soviet Union in hockey? They were not better athletes. They were not better players individually, but they banded together. And I thank Bill Lawrence so much for creating Scrubs and Ted Lasso
Oh
and
my gosh,
all of the
I
other
love
shows.
him. Huge fan.
I love
Yeah.
him. And all he talks about is exactly what you and I are talking about. Everything is about bonding, empathy, connection. That's what makes a team. And I love it in Scrubs more than anything else to see. I mean, it's my comfort food is Scrubs.
Yeah.
I watch and rewatch that show to watch these guys connect with each other.
Have you
and
watched the
support each other.
reboot?
I just
Because
started
I was
it,
scared
and I'm
to watch the reboot.
stoked.
I was so worried it was going to get messed up for me. And I've been quite pleased with the first 2 episodes I've seen so far as of this recording.
As have I. And so, yeah, so it's obviously timestamped, but all I can tell you is I'm hopeful. I mean, Bill Lawrence and Zach Braff, I mean, my goodness, what more do we want?
But actually, I know we're joking about this, but that's actually a central theme of Ted Lasso.
Oh, and I'm not even joking.
Taking a team of people who might not have been all star performers, but when you create those connections and you create that camaraderie and you create that environment, they're capable of believing in themselves. They're capable of performing at optimum capacity for each other. And then that's where the alchemy happens.
1,000,000%. And one of the things that we found in the literature is that diversity wins, but it only wins if perspective taking occurs. And what is required for perspective taking? This thing called empathy. And so if we really want connection, and if we really want the sum to be, I mean, the whole to be greater than the sum of the parts, we need to empathize. We need to take perspective. We want diversity. Temple Grandin said on my podcast, she's, a very famous woman with autism. She said, if somebody had my version of autism and was on the Space Shuttle Columbia team, it would not have exploded in outer space because I would have seen the problem ahead of time. Neurodiversity, ethnic diversity, all types of, whether it's gender diversity, we need diverse perspectives,
Yeah.
and we need to take each other's perspectives, override again our inherent narcissism. We all have narcissism. It's self-protective. We need it to live,
Right.
but we also don't want it to get out of hand, and we want to be able to empathize. We
Okay,
hit Control Alt Delete and we empathize.
What a great segue, because that was the other thing I wanted to talk about the need to have diversity in your connections, both your personal and professional relationships. And I want to read this passage out loud to everyone, which is where you talk about diversity plus respect wins, right? This commitment to depersonalized conflict, looking at the project as a puzzle, may have led to the magic that caused flight. Poetically, they came to discover that the only way to get the machine off the ground was for each propeller to spin in the opposite direction, one clockwise and one counterclockwise. This was a perfect metaphor for Orville and Wilbur Wright and their connection and appreciation of what each brought to make the project successful. And then you had another quote in here, which I love, which is, of course, we want similarities between ourselves and our partners. And you were talking here in context of romantic relationships. But as I read this, I kept thinking of workplace relationships and diversity. We want similarities between ourselves and our partners, but even among the most similar people, differences will exist. Used properly, they can strengthen the relationship. And we've talked a lot on this show. I can't even, there's not even enough episodes I can link to in our show notes for this episode on the power of diversity and the ROI of diversity. But all that to say that when you have people that bring some different perspectives to the table, each person can see different risks and see different opportunities because they're looking at a different facet of the challenge or the problem. And so when we think about creating diverse connection communities, I guess, for lack of a better word, what advice would you have about being intentional about that? Because sometimes that can feel fake of like, oh, I need more friends who are gay, or I need more friends who are trans. I'm going to go find them, right? What are some of the things that you've seen, whether with your patients or, in the research that you've done about how you can cultivate a more diverse community to connect with?
There are so many ways to do this. And it actually, I hate the term kills two birds with one stone, but I'm going to use
feed two birds with one scone.
Oh,
thank you.
This can feed two birds with one scone. It almost
I can't take credit for it. I heard it somewhere funny. And I love it.
That is so great. It's kind of like Lady and the Tramp eating one little string of pasta.
It is.
But I love that. Feed two birds with one scone. So here's how you feed two birds with one scone.
Okay.
You go do something that you love doing, and anyway, it could be a meetup for hiking, and hopefully it'll be a diverse age group. One of the things that Chip Connolly, who runs the Modern Elder Academy, says, and you're nodding because I know you know him, is that we need friends who are at least 10 years older than we are and at least 10 years younger, because most of us don't have friends who are 10 years older or 10 years younger. And without my children in my life telling me what 6'7" actually means, because it doesn't mean anything, it's really important to have diverse voices. So do something you love doing and talk to people about that. So if you have a common denominator, that's great. Another tip, though, is this one. This is like the funniest idea I've ever heard of. This comes from Will Schwalbe. Will Schwalbe is this editor of, I forget, Macmillan or one of the other big publishing houses. He's been on the podcast, but he does something that absolutely doesn't interest him at least once a month. He goes to an event. He goes to a thing on the history of blah, blah, that he has no interest in. And he meets people, and he very often finds that it's actually quite interesting. But he also meets people who are into that thing, people he wouldn't have met otherwise. And sometimes there's a connection there. So Alex Trebek apparently said, I'm so curious, I'm even interested in things I'm not interested in. And I think that's a really good way to go through life. And the idea of seeing life as a puzzle comes from A.J. Jacobs. He said that if two people could look at the same problem and see it as a puzzle that needs to be solved. And I love that idea of Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright. They would have project-based arguments. You need somebody to argue with you, and so that you can get to the truth. As long as you're both committed to the truth and not ego, then we can really come up with better ideas. Steve Jobs would famously say to Johnny Ives, "Hey, Johnny, I got a really stupid idea. Want to hear about a stupid idea?" I may be paraphrasing it poorly, but I believe that's how it went. And Johnny would
Yeah.
always said yes, because I
Yeah.
would love to hear a stupid idea from you, because your
Right.
so-called stupid idea is probably one tweak away from becoming the greatest idea.
Right. Oh,
So
and kind of bringing this back to, the question we were talking about before about why you even need connections in general, but also in the workplace. That's just one way leaders can foster connection, is to ensure there is psychological safety where people can have those kinds of conversations. And like, I have this crazy idea and I know I'm not going to be shunned. I know I'm not going to be fired. I know I'm not going to be laughed at. You might get laughed at maybe, but maybe it's all done in jest, right? In joy. And that's one of the things when leaders go, well, how do I create more connections with my team? That's one way to do it, is ensure everyone feels safe and seen and heard and valued. Do you have any other tips that you could apply for a workplace leader on how to create those connections within their teams?
I need to look this person up. Just one second. We're just going to take a second, because for some reason I'm blanking on her name, and she's been on the podcast. So Dr. Amy Edmondson teaches at Harvard School of Business, and she is the person who came up with the term psychological
She's the queen
safety.
of psychological safety.
And
yeah.
she has found that the most innovative companies have the highest amounts of psychological safety, because without it, we cannot fail forward. We need to fail forward. Everything that you and I have learned in our life has been the byproduct of us being willing to look like idiots for a minute. Because for me to learn how to speak a foreign language, I had to make all the mistakes. And that's the difference. So for a company to do what it needs to do, psychological safety is super important. And that's why when somebody comes up with an idea, we really, and during a brainstorm, we really give it respect and consideration. They might be seeing something that could become the next Post-it note,
Right.
the next penicillin, the next great mistake that becomes something amazing. And really, really look at it almost Talmudically. Talmudically means to look at it from every angle possible and really give it respect and consideration.
Yeah.
And if we're able to do that, we are going to be more innovative, and we'll also probably have higher retention and attract the best talent.
Well, all the things, right? And that willingness to put ego aside and see someone else's point of view, hear someone else's idea, that is empathy. That's the ability to say,
Yes.
I don't have all the answers. Let me hear your point of view. Let me learn from your lived experience to see if that might be a good opportunity or a good way to solve the problem. So, when people ask, like, a lot of people have that misperception that empathy is all about crying on the floor with your employees. No, it's also about being open-minded and to say, oh, I'm going to be curious about someone else's perspective and point of view. And that's how you create an environment that creates connections for each other.
I didn't know why I wanted to go to Japan so badly until years later. There were several reasons, but one of the biggest one was I wanted to live in a place that felt 180 degrees from my own reality. I wanted to walk around in a world where my reference points made no sense and their reference points I had to really get to know.
Yeah.
And in order to understand just a little bit about Japan, I had to walk around in their shoes, and that was really helpful to me. I only came to realize this. It wasn't just the sushi and the ramen that attracted me, although those were very attractive. And similarly, and you point this out in The Empathy Edge, and I actually talk about it on my episode today, I interviewed a great novelist who wrote The Gargoyle, Andrew Davidson out of Canada. One of the things that we found in the literature is that we become better people when we read more fiction, because we're able to enter the worlds of more characters. And there's no question in my mind that actually, quite frankly, empathy and connection are probably the two bigs in this life.
Yeah.
Like if we can can get more of those two things. So I think you and I have stumbled upon the two biggest things that matter the most in terms of our heartbeats.
Absolutely.
Empathy and connection are the bigs. Like, what do we regret when we're on our deathbeds? We regret love not given. We regret chances not taken. Empathy and connection.
Yeah. It all comes down to that. All right. You have a connection formula. What is a connection formula?
Well, we all have a different winning formula. And some of us have, it's almost like a walk-on song that baseball players use when they're going up to bat. You and I probably have a different walk-on song. And similarly, we probably have different formulas for our success. And we have different formulas to make us feel connected to ourselves, others, the world, and something greater. Like, I might have been awestruck when I saw this singer on stage, and you might have been in the same audience and said,
been like,
yeah, not for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about? That was a life-changing experience.
What did you see? Yeah.
And you might have a go-to-bed routine that works for you and allows you to connect with yourself and shut in and attend to yourself and put out all the fires so that you can really, really feel rest coming on. And my ritual might be quite different. We might have different rituals for how we connect with our friends and how we connect with our romantic partners, pets. My father could go through 5 lifetimes and not touch a pet. I can't go through a day.
No.
I talk about pets as a very important, significant other for those of us who are inclined. So each of us has different elements that we need to pay attention to and ask ourselves, what do we need and at what frequency to feel connected to ourselves, others, the world, and something greater. Go ahead.
So you're saying that the connection formula is different for everyone, and we need to discover what that is for ourselves.
Exactly.
What are some ways that we make that discovery? Is it just about paying attention, or how can you guide us on that?
I'm gonna name, there are infinite ways, but I'm gonna name 3.
Okay.
One of them is to ask yourself, what is something that I used to love doing, but I stopped doing because life got in the way? Exhume that from its dusty crypt and try it and see if there's still something there. Right. The second way is to try something new. Like, somebody mentions, hey, you know what I'm really into is I'm really into Photoshop. And it's like, gosh, that would be really cool. I'd like to get into Photoshop or scrapbooking or something.
Salsa dancing, whatever. Yeah.
Salsa dancing, right. Try something new. And the third way that I can think of, and again, there are infinite ways, is to look at lists. I actually have a list in my book of things that you want to try but maybe haven't tried. Maybe you have what some people refer to as a bucket list. Some people don't like the bucket list. I do. Personally, I think it's a really good thing to have. The bucket list is the list of things that you want to do before you kick the bucket. And we need to pay attention to those things. I'm not sure about skydiving for me. I have very mixed feelings
a hard
about
pass
this.
for
me. It might be a pass for me too. But I'm not sure if on my deathbed I'll regret not having done it. But who knows? But one thing I've always wanted to do, and this is as dumb as this sounds, I've never been to NOLA. I've never been to New Orleans. We're going this weekend.
Okay,
and
good.
Finally going to check this magnificent place out. We're doing a massive, a 4-day weekend.
Have some beignets. Yeah,
exactly. And we're going to eat all the things. And even though we're doing something that I know for sure I want to do at some point, and don't put it off. Go do those things.
How does that help you with a connection formula? Like, connect the dot for us on that one.
If connection defined is what makes you feel like you come alive, and we didn't really go into that, but it's vitality, it's life force. And I actually had about 20 mental health professionals weigh in so that we could kind of construct a working definition of what connection means. I will probably come very alive when I'm walking through these vibrant streets of New Orleans, seeing the musicians, smelling the smells, eating the foods, going on ghost tours, and things like that. This will cause me to come alive and evoke a part of me that has never been alive in my chemical connections in this lifetime. And if it is vitality, and I believe that a place like New Orleans brings that on, but we don't have to go to New Orleans. We can actually do something ostensibly stupid. Like for one Father's Day, I actually had my family get on a Gray Line bus tour of San Francisco. We live right just at the cusp of San Francisco. We hung out with the tourists from Oklahoma and Germany, and when people asked where you're from, we said San Jose, 50 miles south. And the bus driver said, I have never had anybody from San Jose. But even though we are very familiar, and my wife lived there for many years, and I lived adjacent for many years, about 80% of the things that we learned on that tour were things we didn't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So go do something that might be campy, that might be local. Go on to Atlas Obscura. It's a great website that has all kinds of weird stuff. Not far from where you used to live was, there was this tavern where there was a ghost of the blue lady over in the Moss Beach Tavern.
Oh yeah, Moss Beach Distillery. Yeah.
Moss Beach Distillery. There you go.
Yeah.
And there are just all kinds of fun, campy things that we can do
Right.
that will cause us to feel more alive.
Well, and that really relates to my self-care pillar, pillar 2, which is not about manis and petties. It's about re-energizing your heart and your mind and your soul in a different way to get you to refill your tank, refill your capacity and your cup so you can meet people with empathy and be open to connection. And it's almost like we need those occasional shocks to the system to keep us more open to what's happening and get us out of our rut, I guess.
There's a reason why cold plunges are popular. It's not
another hard pass, but okay.
It's not because they feel good.
No.
But it's because they cause us to feel more awake and alive. They're vitalizing.
Yeah. All right. So as we wrap up, I have a final quick question for you. This is sort of like a little speed question. I want to read this Chinese proverb you have at the end of the book, where you say there's an ancient Chinese proverb that goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is now. You may have missed out on many connection opportunities throughout your life, but there is no time like the present to start leaning into the 4 types of connection that you talk about in the book. So if you can give us your quick hit, someone's listening, they're like, yeah, I need more connection in my life. What's your gem? What's your go-to strategy that you can leave them with to take an actionable step towards cultivating or perhaps reigniting connections in their lives and in their work?
I would go back to what I just said, and since repetition
the cold
is the
plunge.
mother of
back to the cold plunge.
Since repetition is the mother of mastery, I would ask yourself, what's something that you used to do that you love doing that you stopped doing? Or what is something in your family's tradition? Perhaps your grandma used to be a gardener, and you want to honor her memory and feel more connected to the earth. Mm-hmm. Go try that out and see if there's a there. It's this spring, this summer, whenever you want to plant in the winter,
right?
Because there's a lot of things to be planted. Go do something that honors you and allows you to feel more alive while you're living. Mm-hmm. More alive while you're living. Not another day, another dollar. It's hump day. Life work kind of sucks or whatever it is. No, don't live this limp pasta lifestyle. Like live al dente, lively, vibrant.
I'm getting you a bumper sticker that says live al dente. I love that so much. Adam, this has been such a joy. I hope everyone picks up this book. It's called Super Psyched: Unleash the Power of the 4 Types of Connection. I also want to encourage my listeners to take a gander into your podcast. You have amazing guests on Super Psyched. I love listening to your podcast when I'm doing road trips back to San Francisco. But you're always so much fun, and you are so positive without it being toxic positivity. And I just love that about you. So thank you for this book. Thank you for your work. Thank you for healing people's hearts and minds in your profession that you almost didn't pursue, but finally got convinced to. We're going to have all your links in the show notes, and I'll put some reference links to some of the things that we talked about. But for anyone that's listening to us while they're road tripping or working out, where's the best place they can find out more about your work?
Sure. Just Google my name, Adam Dorsay. I've got 3 TEDx talks. I've got a website, and the website is Dr. Adam Dorsay, DORSAY.com. It's DRADAM, DORSAY.com.
Love it. Thank you so much, Adam.
Oh, it's been a blast.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Please rate, review, and share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, please remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.